Hey guys, welcome everyone to another episode of the Aetherius AI podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I'm joined by Victor, representing Edamam, a leading force in nutrition, data, and technology. Edamam is all about making food and nutrition information accessible, accurate, and actionable for developers, healthcare professionals, and businesses alike. Victor, thanks for joining us. To kick things off, could you share a little bit about Edamam and what inspired you to kind of found the company? Because it is very specific. And I guess a lot of people would wonder, even myself, like you wouldn't think like such a big company exists in the back end that's powering our food and nutrition data.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, glad to be here. Very quickly about Edamam. It starts with my personal journey. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, 32 years, four startups. My claim to fame is I built Bulgaria's largest internet company back in the days of Internet 1.0, together with a friend of mine. And then we sold that company. I was looking for something new to do. And one of my passions is cooking. So I've been cooking for 35 plus years, almost every day. And one day, as I was thinking about new business, I realized, I'm spending 4 or 5 hours a day thinking about food. Might as well combine the passions of food and technology and launch a company. So it took me about 10 months of, poking around to understand what are the problems we can solve with technology and food. And the obvious problem was the inaccuracy, inconsistency, unavailability of information about what one should eat. And this is still the case. It was quite some time ago when that happened, but it's still the case. So I set up Edamam to essentially organize the world's food knowledge with a mission to help everyone make the right food choice about food. This is still the mission of the company. It was a 50-year mission, still is a 50-year mission. And so that's how we got going. And we started initially as a B2C company focused on recipes and nutrition because that was the market then. Then we switched to a B2B company focused on nutrient, allergen, diet information for every meal that people eat. And we productize that and sell it to businesses in the food, health, and wellness sectors. And now we're embarking on our next chapter with AI and building personal virtue nutritionists for everyone. So that's the short story.
No, that's amazing. That's super interesting. It's always better, I feel, when an entrepreneur has a passion behind their project, especially when a talented entrepreneur like yourself, and having both those combined, it makes an amazing product which really caters for the customer rather than just kind of doing the basic. And it always helps. So that's amazing to hear. I guess a little bit more about yourself. What does your kind of day-to-day look like?
It is varied, so I don't do the same things every day, except I always make time for exercise, meditation. I don't touch a device in the first 2 hours of the day, and I don't touch a device in the last 2 hours of a day. But other than that, it's work and making time for social connections. I don't work more than 6 hours a day, which is, usually what entrepreneurs do, but I've learned my lesson over the years. For the long run, you gotta keep your health going. I do work every day. So I don't have, per se, a weekend or vacation. On weekends, I work less, but I do work every day. And it's about 6 hour days. So most of my work happens in 2 hour chunks, 1 to 2 hour chunks. I take break, I go work out, I make a meal, whatever it is. That's kind of how the day to day works.
Amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into the trap of like the hustle culture and grinding, and it's important, I think, in a certain phase. But as you mentioned, for longevity, it's good to kind of prioritize your health on both regards. And do you think your journey with Edamame has kind of influenced your food eating behavior or everything like that, and seen maybe the food industry in a different light?
Inevitably, it has, although not as much, because I started with a very strong ground of my beliefs of what one should eat. And I personally try to eat food that is produced by regeneratively grown farmers, or farmers that regeneratively grow food. I know a lot of farmers. That's how I buy it. I cook, I eat in season, all that stuff. So in terms of actual habits, it hasn't impacted that much, but inevitably over the years, I've learned quite a bit about food and impact of food on health, chronic conditions, prevention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've come to believe that food is truly a major element of preventing and curing disease. And so part of the mission of the company is to help everybody in the world live up to 120 without chronic conditions and mental illness, because that's achievable. Obviously, there are other elements like sleep and exercise and contemplation, et cetera, but food is a major part of it. So yes, I've been impacted. I keep being impacted. Part of my other life is biohacking and longevity focused. And so inevitably those two intersect, and it just, people learn new things all the time. New research comes up all the time.
100%. And I love the mission statement behind the company. I definitely think it's possible. It'll be tough to change people's beliefs in terms of what they. But a lot of the time, I guess people don't really know what they're kind of consuming and what their kind of nutrition value is. I know I downloaded an app the other day which allowed me to scan all of the things in the house, including the skincare, hair care, and of course food as well. And it was breaking down and it was giving scores and it really simplified it. And those kind of things are an amazing for like education aspect and accessibility to customers. If there was some foods that you would say is a big no, which one would you say is no for anyone listening?
So very few things that make big difference in reality, but they're very simple. One is processed foods. So anything that contains on the package ingredients that your grandma didn't know, probably not good. Avoid them. Generally, you have to recognize everything that's on the package. And that's one thing. The second is sugar. And that's nothing new, but avoid added sugar. We overconsume it. And that is likely at the bottom of a lot of current chronic condition problems that people have, the obesity epidemic, the diabetic epidemic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the two basic things. Other than that, it's all very personal. It depends on your microbiome, where you grew up, the season, your age, et cetera, et cetera. In general, I think plant-forward diet is better, but that's not universally true. If you're an Eskimo, you probably are better off with eating a lot of meat. And then, of course, if you grew up in India, you probably don't need to eat meat and still be very healthy. So it really depends on where you grew up and how your microbiome was fed. But for the most part, avoiding processed food and sugar will get you a long way there.
Hmm. That's amazing. And one, I think, important point we touched on there was the personalized aspect. How does your company kind of incorporate that personalized aspect into customers' nutrition, or do you not need to tackle that because you go to B2B market?
Both. So up until now, we never were making a statement as to what the person should eat. We leave it to our customers, which are companies that may be managing chronic conditions, their corporate wellness, their population health companies, food companies, et cetera, et cetera. We leave them to make the judgment for their customers, employees, patients, whoever it is. Now that we are building an AI virtual nutritionist, inevitably we'll start having a persistent memory of conversations and we'll have to do personalization. So personalization would be based obviously on all the knowledge that's out there and also on our unique data. So over the years, we've compiled what is arguably the largest database of food and nutrition in the world with 5 million recipes and 1 million foods that are tagged and analyzed for every nutrient, allergen, lifestyle, that chronic condition, et cetera, et cetera. We have over 400 data points for every food out there. And so we can do very precise personalization on the fly. And so that's what's coming up.
That's really powerful. Yeah, we'll definitely dive into the AI personalization section in a second. But you're right, the it sounds like there's a lot of nuances and many data points that you need to cover with the food. So are there any I was wondering, any specific companies that people might recognize that you serve, or maybe products that people wear, see on a day-to-day basis that you partner with?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you use Amazon Alexa, we help them with data. If you use Microsoft search engine Bing, the nutrition data for recipes comes from us. If you use Noom, they are a client of ours, a little bit more specific like Virta Health, and then, some of the big food companies like Nestle, McCormick, Barilla. So there's quite a few companies that we help. New York Times,
Yeah.
Food Network, so if you get nutrition data, that's from us. Actually,
Yeah.
most of the recipe sites in the English language web get nutrition data from us, with the exception of the Meredith companies. Yeah, people probably use us. One of the measures we have for the success of the company is how many people we reach with our data. And because of the partnerships with the companies I mentioned, we think that we reach probably well over 1 billion people. And so that's kind of our measure.
Yeah, as I said at the kind of start of the podcast, that a lot of people wouldn't even know. They wouldn't even think
Right.
to they would just think, oh, it's just Microsoft doing it. It's just Amazon doing it. But it's amazing to have like people like yourself on the pod so we can share that the massive amounts of like specification goes into these kind of things. So that's really powerful. I guess we've covered a lot of the good. What would you say are some of your biggest challenges, maybe in the past, and how you've overcome them? And then we'll dive into some of the challenges that you might be facing now.
Yeah, so in the past, I think the biggest scare for the company was the B2C model not working out. When we started, we got to about 800,000 users, but it wasn't a transparent business model, easy. We didn't have large enough audience to do advertising. Conversion of e-commerce wasn't happening, and subscription was not something that people were willing to do. So we had to pivot to a B2B strategy. So, and that took a little bit of time. Luckily, we had very strong technology and were able to reproductize, put APIs, licensing data product, et cetera, et cetera. And we pivoted, but that was, a transition that we needed to navigate. So that was a challenge. And today the challenge is AI. It's moving so fast that no matter what we decide, it's probably outdated in a week or 2 weeks. You just have to keep up, have the long-term vision, and be able to accommodate very fast. There's one way to look at it is that our company is going to go completely under because AI is going to take over. And then there is the other view where we can leverage AI and really make something very powerful and big. And
Mhm.
both are possible. So it is keeping the whole team moving. 'Cause part of it is resistance to adoption of AI. Part of it is, the fast change, which most people are not as used to, and being able to really very be flexible and adjust. So it's a challenge. I'm sure it's a challenge for a lot of companies, and everybody's trying to figure it out.
No, 100%. And to the previous point, the past challenges, I guess I can see the B2C market being tough as people don't necessarily see they might use it for a month and then maybe be like, oh, they don't stay consistent with it. So the B2B market is definitely, I guess, why you've seen most of your successes. And that's amazing. You recognize that in an early
Right.
stage. And yeah, we'll go into a bit of the AI stuff now as well. We see and hear so many consumers and markets struggling with day-to-day stuff. And as you echoed, they feel like they're so far behind, even if they're catching up and there's some news coming out every single week. So you mentioned that you're going to be launching an AI agent. How is that going to be used within the market and help your kind of clients as well as reaching the end consumer?
Yeah. So the whole vision is that because we have unique data that's not available out there, OpenAI doesn't have it, Google Gemini doesn't have it, et cetera, we're able to train models on our data that is very accurate, and we are able to provide with much more accurate precision, personalization around meal planning, eating habits, etc. And that's the goal. We are trying to launch what we call personal virtual nutritionist, which essentially would replicate what a dietitian does for an end user, from intake to suggestions to managing food logging to nudging and notification, etc., etc., etc. We're building that. It's an agentic infrastructure. It's be many agents that do various tasks the dietitian does. We're starting with a meal planning agent because we think that's the biggest need right now. And we will be starting with helping dietitians, actually not competing with them. So there's a huge shortage of registered dietitians in the US, in the world. The demand is probably 10 times the available supply, and dietitians, cost $100 to $150 an hour. So we think we can launch something that is a lot cheaper, 24/7 available. But initially, we'll try to optimize the work of dietitians, help them, help more customers. So if they can help 10 people in a day, maybe they can help now 20 or 30 people in a day, maybe even 100. And so that's where we're going. Eventually, for non-medical applications, the standard is weight loss and lifestyle diets. We may launch something that goes direct to consumer. Again, it will be through companies. So we're not launching a direct to consumer product, but we'll be launching something that company can leverage and just offer to their consumers. Companies like MyFitnessPal, for example, Weight Watchers. Those companies. And then down the road, probably 2, 3, 4 years, once we have enough data and reliability, we may actually apply for a medical device status and get clearance by FDA or the other authorities and be able to start providing super medical advice with a virtual nutritionist and dietitian, and hopefully help everybody in the world. That's always been the vision of the company, to build a personal virtual nutritionist. AI makes it possible now, so that's the vision.
That's super powerful. And were you using AI? I'm guessing you're still using it in the back end anyway for your business previous to this.
Yeah, it depends how you define AI. We started the company by building natural language processing for the food domain, and the team was superstar engineers that have done search engines and semantic organization and NLP, etc. We've obviously used machine learning over the years. What is currently understood by AI, which I guess is large language models and the applications, we're using it. We're using it only where it adds value, because sometimes you can start using it and actually, you know, fixing what's been done might take longer. So you have to be judicious, but obviously we are trying to optimize our workload, be more productive, more efficient. I do think that there are very easy use cases around sales, customer service, marketing that are handled fairly well. Engineering to some extent, although it depends. It's still to be seen whether you're more effective by using AI and then fixing it than versus just engineering doing the work. Depends front end versus back end. There's a lot of nuance there. The trajectory of current AI is very clear, and eventually, I think a lot of the work and tasks that we do are going to be handled by AI. I personally have a project to build my own agent that will replicate me, so I can sit back and relax and somebody else runs the company, including forecasting and planning what to do, not just analysis of you know uh, spreadsheets and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, as we mentioned, get scared, but there's so many use cases for it that you can use to enhance your life and develop yourself and use it alongside you. Because you might be tired one day, or you might forget one day, or something happens, but then the agent doesn't forget. It's on 24/7. It's working 24/7. And I guess that's how it will kind of help the dietitians as well. And I think it will give them a real unique edge, because I know dietitians have been struggling in general to kind of build their client base. Um, and it will give them a super unique edge when they're going to customers and kind of pitching them on their 24/7 service rather than just them on one call. Is that how you kind of envisage it going, where they can access that dietitian and have an agent of them 24/7, basically?
Yeah, it will depend, because obviously for a dietitian to adopt our virtual nutritionist, there might be some conflict, internal conflict. I think we can help them. So the issue is actually not building their client base. The issue is they have very limited amount in a day to serve their clients. Most dietitians have too many potential requests and not enough time. So we'll try to optimize the time they spend preparing for sessions with clients, because that is, it's kind of the part of the iceberg that's under the water. That's where we can optimize quite a bit of their tasks and make them more efficient and more effective. But then, yes, if they like that as a service, the 24/7 availability is super powerful, because people may have a question at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to call their dietitian. They can talk to the virtual nutritionist, and then the dietitian can review that down the road. So it's a question of adoption. And I also, honestly, I don't know the answer, but what we are doing after we launch a meal planning agent next month is we'll have a few companies test it with dietitians and lifestyle medicine doctors, and we'll start getting real feedback and understand how people want to use it. Because part of it is, yeah, we launch it, but how do people actually want to use it? So we'll find out.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's super important. The first kind of phase of building it out will always be just kind of testing it, because AI is so early, and if people are willing to accept it and how quickly they are. But we've seen there's a big shift. I think over
Oh
this year,
yeah.
especially over this year, maybe when it first came out a couple of years ago, people were really scared, but now I think people are starting to accept it and know it's better for them. Amazing on the AI side. We love kind of diving into that, and companies already integrating it. Outside of AI, are there any kind of extra features, integrations that you're kind of looking to go for? Is it 100% into AI for the next foreseeable months?
It is AI adjacent. One very interesting artifact of AI is that we saw demand for our APIs grow very fast. And I guess my understanding there is that people are building a lot of agents that need tools, and our APIs serve as tools. So we are going to try to make the APIs very agent friendly, obviously put in an MCP layer, et cetera, lots of use cases. Kind of our vision is, and everything is pointing in that direction, that apart from human developers, we'll probably get next to traffic of agents coming to our side, and they should be able to start building directly without any hindrance. So that's another project that we're doing.
I'm sure the people listening will be looking forward to that, and the companies, I'm sure we'll see it soon enough down the line with the companies that use your product. And in terms of like partnerships, you mentioned you partner with the companies that you have at the moment, Amazon, Microsoft. Are there any future ones that you're looking to expand out to? I know you mentioned kind of more direct market, but are there any other type of valuable partnerships that you see are good? Dietitians is another one. Any other markets?
Uh, yeah, I mean, look, we have discussions with lots of companies. I'd rather not mention names before they're actually deals, but anybody that is in population health, chronic condition management, the corporate wellness, those are the companies we aim to work with. We think we will be integrating with companies that are providing data that be useful for personalization. Companies like Insight Tracker, for example, for blood, or Viome, and these types of companies, wearables, all of them. Long term, the best client for us will be insurance companies, because that's where the value accrues. If you are able to help somebody eat better and be healthier for that, the money comes from essentially insurance premium going down. So that's where we're going. Part of, because we have a bifurcated market, the big names, and then we have over 250,000 developers that have started building apps on our APIs. I think that market will also grow. And I can't tell you the names of the companies because they're usually very early on, but there's quite a few of those.
Yeah, no, super powerful. Very exciting things coming up. And in terms of your kind of view and being in the industry, how do you see the future of nutritional data in digital health?
I don't think it's changed. So my thesis when I started the company is that eventually, to help everyone eat better, they have to have access to the right information at the right time, at any point. So whenever they make food decisions, whether it's at the grocery store, green market, in a restaurant, talking to their kids what they should have for dinner, this type of thing. And it all starts with data. So that's why we focus the company on data from the get-go. And I think this is still going to be the case. Data is going to be the gold on which to build good applications for people in everyday life. So I don't think that's going to change. I think what AI is accelerating is the types of data that can be helpful. It's not just nutrition data. Now you can start having things like geolocation. We can detect that you enter into a restaurant and maybe suggest what items from the menu you can buy, or see that you're driving towards a grocery store and remind you of the shopping list and the things that you need to buy, or have information from your refrigerator about what you have there, and send you suggestions about recipes to cook, and maybe hook it up to a drone that will deliver the ingredients you don't have. All this is data, and this is adjacent data that is super helpful. And I think this is where the future is going, is making data usable across various different domains.
Well then, so it's not more about the actual data, I guess, because it doesn't necessarily change all the time, or more frequently. It's more about the accessibility and providing it at a faster rate.
Right, right. We constantly working on expanding our data, but it's marginal, right? Once you have all the nutrients and allergens and lifestyle diets, et cetera, there's not that much that you can add. But we work, for example, with University of South Carolina to add dietary inflammatory index to data, which is very key for fighting inflammation, which is usually the cause of aging and a lot of chronic conditions, stuff like that. We work with City University of London around CO2 data. What's the impact on the CO2 impact of various meals, etc. So we keep adding data points, but we're not never going to stop to do that. But a lot of it is the value is going to accrue of how that data is used to personalize in real time, contextually, to actually move people, nudge them towards eating.
I know that makes a lot of sense. And do you feel like there's any I find it very interesting how the eating habits of people might have changed over the few years, and I guess you can see that. And do you think there's things or diseases or things that people might have had that have come about due to eating habits over the few years because of how maybe processed food has become and people don't really understand what they're eating?
Yeah, I think depends on the time horizon. So if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, the trend is actually positive because people have become more aware about the the challenges that processed food and sugar pose. There is a lot of new information and data. The whole food as medicine movement and the blogosphere and the podcast world have provided a lot of data. So people are moving towards healthier eating. And it's become apparent by the fact that big food companies are starting to make healthier products. The demand is there. Now, if you look back 3 to 4 decades, then the problems are really transparent. When processed foods became everyday, the whole obesity and diabetic epidemic and chronic condition epidemic, that is kind of, you can track it back to that time frame. And so there is a momentum to that, because food is addictive for all the wrong reasons. Manufactured food, the agricultural space, the whole of agriculture actually is still set up to produce mass foods that are not necessarily the healthiest and usually contain pesticides and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the direction is the right direction now. And I think over time, the challenge is to change three of the biggest industries in the world. You got to change the food industry, the agriculture industry, and the healthcare industry, and it all revolves around food. So, if you want to talk about moonshot, that's kind of our goal. Like, can we help change those three industries so eventually people get to the right food?
Yeah, 100%. And do you feel like in terms of your kind of like next 5 years, is that kind of your goals and where one of your goals, I guess, and see where your company heads into?
Uh, I don't think in 5 year increments. I think in 50-year increments. So my goals are only 50 years, always 50 years out. But if I have to focus on 5 years, I think it will be how do we leverage AI to start changing people's habits in a more meaningful way. The biggest problem that's never been solved is behavior change. And so I think AI has the potential to help with behavior change. So that will be kind of more of a 5 year project. And we start nudging people towards the better for them behavior. And if we do, then we can start talking about how that impacts big industries and how we can change those. But that's more of a 40 to 50-year project. It's not something that's going to change very quickly. It's a very entrenched interests and ways of doing things. The money's there. And so changing that will require a revolution if it's going to be a short term. I bet it's more of a long term change.
Hmm. That's commendable to kind of think that far. Most people don't even go for the next year increment. So it's very powerful in that way of thinking. But I guess you're right. In your industry, you kind of have to because it's so ingrained. Do you feel like the companies that I guess you work with obviously have a good adoption to the nutritional data? Have you found maybe previously any kind of resistance to incorporating more data points, being more transparent with their customers with some companies, or also face regulatory issues and those kind of challenges from government, etc.?
Yeah, so I'll tackle the regulatory stuff first. There hasn't been that much regulation, and that's part of the problem, I think, to some extent. But there might be more, especially as AI comes on board and people start using it. So, as they say, watch this space. In terms of resistance, yes, we have seen companies that don't want to publish nutrition data. It usually is a philosophical stand rather than anything else. There is, in my opinion, the misconceived perception that tasty food and healthy food are not the same thing. I think healthy food can be very tasty, but a lot of companies that are offering that their brand is associated with taste and pleasure and enjoyment, et cetera, shy away from nutrition data because they don't want to kind of muddle the waters of, of providing nutrition. So that's where we've seen some resistance. Their users, people that use their products oftentimes would insist. So we've seen over the years some companies come around and eventually adopt nutrition data, but it really is a philosophical stand.
Hmm. No, for sure. I guess yeah, it's difficult for all companies when they have their kind of USP to be around taste, as you said, to actually implement that. But yeah, that's super interesting that there has to be too much regulation, and you said that that could be one of the issues. Do you see regulation changing, as you mentioned, with AI, or is it changing in general?
Depends on the region. So Europe is always a little bit more ahead of the curve in terms of regulation. I don't know if it's made significant change, probably, but because it's been incremental, it's hard to see it. The US is lagging behind, and there are structural reasons why regulation is not happening there. There's been a bill in the Congress for well over 20 years through several administrations to, for example, demand nutrition data in restaurants across the board, not just chains. And it's never come around because of entrenched interests and stuff like that. So would AI speed up that process or slow it down? I don't know. It's very hard to say. The whole AI space is moving so far, so fast that many I think administrations have to deal with AI at all first to understand what the regulation is going to be there before they get into specifics of nutrition and health advice, et cetera, et cetera. And those may go in parallel. It's very hard to predict. So it really depends on the country, on history, on culture. There are some countries that are very proactively thinking about it, like Saudi Arabia and Singapore and Japan. I don't think that they're betting on regulation. They're betting actually on education and information, which plays well for us.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, and then 100%, I think for you, it's just about getting into the market, getting your feet wet with the
Yeah.
countries that are definitely like looking to move forward on those. So that's super interesting. And we've covered a lot of different kind of types of people that might be listening. I guess one subset might be people like yourself, maybe 30 years ago, tech startup entrepreneurs who are maybe wanting to get into the nutrition tech space. Do you have any advice for any young budding entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's very simple. And that's a distillation of not only 30 years of being an entrepreneur, but mentoring over 200 startups. I would say there's only two things that make you a successful entrepreneur. The first one is passion. So you really need to love what you're doing, because when the going gets tough, you need to tough it out. And so if it's not making you excited every morning, you're probably not in the right place. And the second is persistence. So this is the mental toughness of riding both the highs and the lows. Don't get too excited when things are going well, and don't get too depressed when things are going bad. And just make the next step. Wake up in the morning and make the next step. Those are the two characteristics that I think people should have if they want to get into whatever it is. Technologies change, trends change. It doesn't really matter. Right now, there's a particular set of technologies that are very exciting. In 5 years, it's going to be a different set of technologies. It doesn't matter, but you have to have that aptitude of passion and persistence. And one thing that you should know if you get into space, that not everybody has the right risk profile. Right. I think everybody should try at least once to start a business just to see if they have. But if you're not willing to live half a year without a salary and not knowing where the next square meal is going to come from, you're probably not built for an entrepreneur, because things like that may happen. So you just have to see how much of a risk profile you have. The true entrepreneurs are okay with ambiguity, being insecure, and not knowing what's going on, and that they actually thrive in that environment.
That's super powerful advice. I think definitely that a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're starting off, they don't take that risk. They don't take action. They don't take the next step forward without kind of knowing where they need to go. And it's always about having a plan, but sometimes it's just about taking the next step and then taking the next step. So for anyone listening, that's super powerful advice. But yeah, I think we've kind of gone through a lot of the questions. Thank you so much, Victor, for coming on the podcast and sharing the journey that you've had and also the future of nutritional health data. And we'd like to wish you a successful launch for your AI agent that's coming up in the future. And if there was anyone that might maybe wanted to find you and reach out to you directly, where would be the best place to contact you?
So me personally on LinkedIn, this is the one media that I actually use every day. And the company is at edamam.com. So, and you can also reach to through the widget there, the feedback widget there. And I actually look at every single interaction that we have with customers.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, you know where to find Edamam. And also, if there's any questions that you might have regarding it, please drop them in the comment section. We'd love to get your insights on what you thought about the conversation. And thank you so much for listening as well. And thank you again for Victor for jumping on, and we wish you the best in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thank you.